Welcome back to Strategy Simplified. We're excited to dive back into our series on travel. This is the fourth and final episode in our series. We started in episodes 1 and 2 talking about the points game in general and how to maximize your efforts through co-branded credit cards. In episode 3, we heard from Coach Tripp as he told of his personal experiences with consulting travel. And today, you get to hear from Namaan and me for a fun storytelling discussion as we share our own triumphs and horrors in travel. I hope you enjoy the discussion.
Welcome to another episode of Strategy Simplified. Namaan here, joined by Stephanie. We're so excited to be with you today for the fourth and final installment of our consulting travel series. Today, both Stephanie and I are going to be sharing a few of our craziest travel stories. And some of you may be shocked and horrified by the nature of business travel. Some of you may think that we're complaining because you've had it way worse than we have. I'm sure that both types of people exist in the audience today, but we're just excited to have a conversation about some of our personal craziest travel stories. Stephanie, how are you doing today? And are you recording this from an airport or not?
Well, for audio quality purposes, of course, I am stationed at home in my controlled environment. However, I have racked my brain for not only professional, but some personal stories as well. At the end of the day, travel is travel. Of course, it comes with a disclaimer that at least the way that my brain works, I completely filter out the worst of the worst. So I had to go back. I asked my parents, I reflected on some journal entries. And so we've brought some stuff into this conversation, but I'm excited to learn more about you, Namaan, through your stories and to be able to just, share about some of our various experiences.
Oh my gosh, Stephanie, I'm sorry that I gave you travel PTSD or yeah. unearthed that for you in the basis of preparing for this episode.
It's all for the benefit of others, right?
It is. Well, how about we dive in, because I've been waiting all week to hear some of your craziest travel stories. Kick us off with the best one. This is a competition for me. I want to see if we've got, if I've got the best one or if you've got the best one here.
Oh my gosh. I feel like based on that premise that you're already going to win. I think instead of kind of, what was the craziest combination of circumstances, I think I have, in essence, maybe even more of a set of vignettes, right? Around kind of different learnings of different periods and times and experience. I look across this and, the one that really sticks out to me, especially given the fact that we're at the end of this consulting travel series, is thinking back to my time working for a large national insurer. And I was working at one of their call centers in Indiana. I'm from Indiana. And on a week-to-week basis, it was one of those projects that had a pretty consistent schedule, pretty expectations were pretty well set. Not a lot changed from week to week, and so it became a personal race and a challenge from week to week. You're talking about story challenges. Well, I can't help but think about this engagement where I timed myself every week. How long did it take from my computer open at the client site in the team room to sitting on the airplane? And I will tell you that driving at the speed limit, it was pretty close. You could get from the client site to the parking garage in about 8 minutes. And my best ever time, of course, you've got transit time, getting to the car, getting out of the car, going through security, getting to the gate, and then actually boarding the plane. 17 minutes was my top score. It's
pretty impressive.
I had it, I kind of like that adrenaline of even like living on the edge. It's kind of like, well, I'm going to be able to get my best time if I can board at the end of the boarding process. So that means that I'm playing with fire to make it there by the time the boarding doors close, 15 minutes before departure, as any good traveler knows for most airports and most airlines. So I kind of dipped my toe in the water, or closer and closer to the fire, rather, week after week after week, and kind of whittled it down. And those types of more controlled environments are the ones that my brain is happy to reflect on, as opposed to maybe where kind of everything went wrong, or maybe there's some times where everything goes right. So I don't know, Namaan, if you think about across your travel experiences and what you thought your best story was, is it a story of like glory and positive things happening, or is it a story of struggle and challenge?
Oh, it's certainly a story of struggle and challenge, but
Okay.
also I would say a little bit of travel skill in overcoming the challenge and the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And so uh, I'll get into it in a few minutes, and you can tell me if it was skill or just dumb luck. But those to me are the travel war stories, if you will.
Mm.
Hey, the airline, the airport, the weather, the mechanics, everyone's conspiring against you, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got to get to New York or LA or Singapore or wherever you have to be by a certain time, and you just got to figure out a way to make it happen. uh, I do have to say though, Stephanie, I play the same game with myself. Like how long from like laptop down or
Mm.
front door closed
Mm-hmm.
to like at the gate or at the airport. My personal goal, if I'm not driving myself to the airport, is can I make it through security and to the gate before the person who dropped me off has left the airport premises? And
Ooh.
so when it's my partner, I can actually track her location on my phone as I'm walking. I'm like, okay, did I beat her to the gate?
Mm.
Before she left the airport premises. So I think sometimes you just got to keep it interesting for yourself when you're
Mm.
traveling so much, and come up with these little games to keep yourself mentally engaged. And I'll also just say one of my other travel pet peeves is just getting to the gate and having to sit there. So
Mm.
like getting to the gate and timing it perfectly to where it's time to board, and you're there 15 to 30 minutes before the gate closes is perfect for me. I know I've planned everything right if that's what's happening when when I'm there at the airport.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, we started this podcast series by setting up the premise that a lot about travel is a game, right? Are you going to decide to really play? Are you going to maximize what flights you take and airlines you fly and what loyalty programs you're part of, what credit cards you have to be able to maximize your personal experience, your personal travel, and let your professional efforts leverage that, be leveraged in that way. Um, it's the same thing as you think about then actually having to go through the process. And the reality is it is a necessary evil. I mean, there are some, but they are, even in this post-COVID world, few and far between. No travel models. So at least everybody's back, most everybody's back to a hybrid model, if not full travel. And so it's something that you just have to get used to. And there's little things that you learn pretty early on, right? Kind of, um, well, I'm making decisions on week to week about what time of day and what days I fly. Maybe I'm going to make those decisions based on when business travelers fly versus when leisure travelers
Absolutely.
fly,
Absolutely.
because you don't want to be behind, in the line with any leisure travelers. They don't know what they're doing. You get really frustrated really quickly. But everybody on that Monday 5:15 a.m. flight is going to have their expertly packed carry-on. They're going to know whether or not they're going to be able to put it into the overhead or have to, pink tag it, so to speak. That's the Delta lingo, right? But, kind of gate
Hmm.
check it. And kind of everybody's there. We're like just in time. And it's a lot different from, I remember when I traveled to, as a part of an engagement, I got to attend a convention in Orlando.
Oh my
And
gosh. The
uh,
worst city in the world for business travel, by the
Exactly.
way.
Exactly. But getting in and out of Orlando, what I had to I didn't realize it going. And so I built the buffer time in leaving, just because I couldn't get through the lines efficiently. I couldn't navigate through the crowds efficiently. I couldn't even get through, the rental car process efficiently. It's just like everything was catered towards the leisure traveler. And, each of us have experienced, and then all the listeners as current or future business travelers, you want to participate in those services and try to go to those locations and even, schedule your flights based on what's going to be most efficient and effective for you. And yeah, not be interrupted in that way.
Absolutely. I love those 5:30, 6 a.m. flights, not only for the reasons that you said, but because I know the plane's going to be there.
Yeah.
Even if the last flight coming in the night before got in at 3 or 4 in the morning, it's ready to go for the 5:30 a.m. flight. And so, because the delays compound throughout the day, and so if I've got to be somewhere, I'm traveling next week to LA, and I just now a couple of days ago changed my flight to the 6 a.m. flight, the first flight out of the city I'm based in, because I know the plane's going to be there, and there's just been too many issues happening lately, and I've got to get there for a client engagement. So the 6 a.m. plane is the one I'm getting on, and I'll spend a few extra hours in LA, but that peace of mind is worth it to me. And then the other thing that I'll just say along with that is, depending on the time of year, I'll try to be really strategic about where I schedule layovers. So I'll try and avoid O'Hare in the wintertime if I can. I try and avoid some other places in the South and Southwest during the summer because of thunderstorms if I can. Not always perfect, but these are all these like extra little variables that come into play as you're trying to optimize your travel life.
Absolutely. It's kind of like, okay, I've got this upcoming engagement. I'm going to do 4 months in Toronto, right? And it was 4 months over the summer in Toronto, and it sounds really cool. Wasn't that far away, geographically from Minneapolis, but oh yeah, you're going to a different country, and you've got to go through the customs process, and making those decisions about what day to fly, what time to fly. Okay, fly early in the morning because then the plane's there. Oh, also make sure you bake in the de-icing process, of course, and the extra time that's going to take every single time that you leave. But then to the seasoned traveler, then you can get into the nuance. Okay. And for those of you kind of uninitiated listening, this may sound crazy, but it's not crazy at all for the consultant to look at, okay, what's the actual plane being flown? What's the setup? Is
100%.
This how big is business class? Is this a 2x2 kind of regional jet? Maybe you end up with preferences over not only even the large scale, business, the large scale airlines. Do you like Delta versus United? But you could end up with preferences one level down. Do I like SkyWest or Republic, right? Kind of the different regional carriers that operate under the brand names of the major airlines. It's just obviously air travel is big business in and of itself. There's a lot of different ways for you to get from place to place. If you're thinking, if you're working in or living in Europe, then you're debating air travel versus rail travel. Even within the, different parts of the US, you could be debating air travel versus car rental versus some places you can do train travel here, but not very frequently. And all of those have different pros and cons, and all of those have different ways to optimize your schedule, gain efficiencies. But once you start living that life, once you do it repetitively, there's a lot of data to get into. There's a lot of detail that you could make yourself familiar with to be able to continue to optimize travel, gain those efficiencies. Or you can just do, as we heard Tripp talk about last week, you could just email the American Express, kind of consultant concierge email and say, hey, book me every Monday and every Thursday PM from X city to Y city. And then you just see what you get. There are some people, but I would say it's a shrinking minority who are just going to go with that straightforward approach, because with the little bit of extra effort to try to plan ahead and to optimize and to think of this as a game as well as the points generating aspect, you can just continue to improve your experience and have fun with this necessary evil of business travel.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
Have you ever heard a new digital trend and thought to yourself, okay, does this really matter? Asking the right questions helps you cut through the noise and get down to what matters most. I'm Jim Hertzfeld, host of the What If, So What podcast, where we discover what's possible with digital and figure out how to make it real by asking what if, so what, and most importantly, now what? Subscribe and listen, and together we can turn big ideas into tangible actions so you can get shit done.
Absolutely. And that's such a good point that you make, Stephanie, around, okay, what plane is running this route at this particular time of day? I'm based in Austin, and we're kind of large city, but we're not a hub city. So you've got this like unique mix of your regional jets and your mainline jets that are flying out of here. And so the less popular times of day to run a route, let's say it is Austin to LA or San Francisco, right? The 6 a.m. flight may have the regional jet and the midday flight may have the mainline jet. And if I've got time flexibility, I get to decide, okay, what's more important to me? When I land, the on-time percentage of that particular time, or the fact that I'll fly the mainline United flight as opposed to the Republic Airways or the SkyWest flight instead. So, that's something that I'm always calculating and balancing. And if you really want to get in the weeds, sometimes what I'll do is I'll go on and I'll check upgrade availability on certain routes and then say, okay, well, there's this many upgrade seats available on this flight or this time as opposed to the other. So you're doing some quick math. What are the chances that my complimentary upgrade is going to clear on this flight or not? And so that's perhaps one of the reasons actually to take a flight with more leisure travelers.
Yep.
So your upgrade clears, but then again, you've got to put up with the frustration. So it's just a balancing act to figure out, okay, what do I want today? And that might change tomorrow.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
Do you find yourself thinking that there just aren't enough hours in the day to get everything done? Do you want to spend the limited time you do have on tasks and things that can't be outsourced? Of course you do. Try Instacart. Instacart is the go-to service for quick and effective grocery delivery. You select groceries from the hundreds of retailers that Instacart has a relationship with, and then they send out a personal shopper who will do the shopping for you and deliver to you when they are finished. Follow the link in the show notes to activate your 2-week free trial of Instacart today. In this 2-week trial, you'll have a $0 delivery fee on all orders over $35. You'll get 5% credit back on eligible pickup orders. You'll experience lower service fees on all orders, and you can cancel anytime. Again, follow the link in the show notes to try Instacart for free for 2 weeks and get time back in your week.
You talked in a previous podcast before about being in Austin and various airlines fighting over the Austin business. I was based out of Minneapolis for a bunch of years. You fly Delta, right? I mean, the vast majority of the time you fly Delta. So if I'm on any Monday, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. flight, I'm kind of like, I'm never going to get upgraded ever. There are always more people that have been, diamond for X years in a row, as opposed to, me as a brand new whatever. And that really was, I overall with travel, even though I've talked a lot about efficiency already, I will be more patient and go through longer lines to be able to get that upgrade. So, I'll fly at a slightly off time to make sure that works out, because that is it's not a guaranteed perk, but you're flying so much, the airlines do want to reward you. Very few business travelers actually purchase those premier seats, but they earn them through their loyalty. So just another thing to try to index for as you're making these decisions.
A million little variables, and how much weight you give each one is going to be dependent on what you care about. And it's so funny. I actually have people close to the end of the year that will call me and walk me through their status and elite earning strategy for the next year to have me sanity test and check it for them. And I'm always giving them the feedback. Well, it's yes, that's what I would do, but you've got to decide what you care about, because I would do that for a different reason than what you care about, or than the way that you travel, or that doesn't necessarily align with the way that you're planning to travel in 2023. And I am planning to travel that way. And so I feel like I'm always giving the typical consulting answer when people ask me about status and earning. It's well, it depends, right? Because it looks different for everybody. Yeah.
I remember the first time I went on a status trip, right? As an outcome from creating my path to platinum, path to diamond spreadsheet for that year, and that I knew my current MQMs and I could chart out my proposed.
Can we just pause for a second and just admit how nerdy that is that you had a spreadsheet? Just charting your
This is exactly what we're talking about here.
I respect it, but I just have to call that out. That's next level.
No, all these people are listening. You get in the game, you know, and if you want to really get in the game, you got to chart it out. And we're talking about airlines a lot. You could do the same thing with rental cars. You could do the same thing with hotels. You think about, you know, back in the day, it was a big deal when Delta evolved to not only counting your miles, but having a dollar equivalent to the whole status thing as well. And so then it just became that much more tricky to figure it out if the stars didn't align and I wasn't already going to get it. But yes, it absolutely felt nerdy the first time that I even put a spreadsheet together. And then when I acted on that spreadsheet and took a pure status flight, that was just, I felt that it was next level at that point in time. And I knew enough at that point that I did all the things that we've already been talking about. I looked at where the different places that I could go on a Delta operated flight on a nicer upgraded aircraft that could be a nice kind of overnight trip or an out and back. And I ended up on a brand new flagship aircraft. I did get upgraded to Delta One on a Minneapolis to Seattle out and back with a quick overnight and a quick trip downtown. And then that cemented my, you know, a December trip. And in in consulting circles, you'll hear people around November and December making these decisions and deciding, okay, yeah, I'm gonna secure it with a quick trip to Amsterdam or the Bahamas or cross country. Because that boost really does, you were talking about a week in and week out experience of having this be a part of your just natural professional flow, that increased chance to give yourself that business class seat really does play a role in making these decisions. And then, with that additional loyalty level, then you get increased earning potential with kind of getting more points as well. It's a snowball effect, and they've designed it that way for a reason. And so you think about, and sometimes you do the opposite, right? You're getting to the close to the end of the year and you decide, I don't want to hit diamond because then I'll have X number of rollover miles to move from this calendar year to next calendar year. And then the pressure will be off to get or maintain status with this airline. So maybe I can only fly Delta half the time next year. And maybe I can do an American status challenge or something like that. And kind of, broaden your wings a little bit. But no, the more people dive in, the more you see that this can be fun, that this can be data driven. I have seen more than one analyst put together slide decks on this and make proposals to their team, to the partners, to the office about different places that they should go do team events or kind of office retreats and things because of the benefits in these areas. So it's nice to see that, people can have fun with it. And I hope that through the conversations that we've been having, that people see that aspect to it. Obviously, there still are horror episodes. There still are times and periods in which just everything goes wrong. At the end of the day, we're both still here, right? So those catastrophes weren't fatal in any way. But Namaan, now I'm itching to hear your story on all these different things that went wrong and what you did because of it. And I'm sure that that's going to prompt some story that I don't even have on my list right now. So
sure.
What happened to you? Tell us. Walk us through.
Absolutely. I first just have to preface this by saying I've never been on a mileage run. All of my travel planning that I do at the beginning of the year so far has actually ended up being enough for me to hit the status I wanted to hit.
Nice.
But I have a friend who flew from San Francisco to Santiago, Chile for one day to have lunch and then got right back on the plane and flew back. So position of privilege, I know, but that's the craziest mileage run I've ever heard of, is San Francisco to Santiago for lunch. So
crazy. Love it. Yeah.
But mine, I'll share a couple with you. The first one that comes to mind is I was in Dallas on a client engagement, Dallas Love, so smaller airport, primarily Southwest operations, and just less options. And if you're familiar with the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, Love and DFW are on opposite sides of the Metroplex. I mean, it's an hour and 15-minute drive to get to the other airport. And so I'm on the Dallas side of the Metroplex in Love, leaving a client engagement, have to be in New York the next morning. and just these classic Texas thunderstorms roll in.
Mm.
And, it's not just Texas, it's all over the Midwest. And so, if you're familiar with Love, the terminals have these like large, almost floor to ceiling windows, and you can see right out onto the runway. You can see all the kind of the flight ops happening outside. You can also see these like storm clouds rolling in from like dozens of miles away.
Mm.
And so I think I'm being smart. I'm like, hey, I can see this coming. Everybody else is just sitting here chilling. They have no idea what's going to hit. Like, I'm going to preemptively change my flight. And so end up doing it. I was flying Southwest that day. Kudos to Southwest. They make it pretty easy for you to do flight changes, etc., especially if you're A-list. But I changed the flight. Turns out, well, that one gets delayed or canceled too. Okay, hey, you know what? Everybody else is standing in line. The line is long at the counter. I'm going to go ahead and do this myself through the app, or I'm going to call the dedicated Premier line. I'm going to skip all these people, get on another flight. Well, that flight's delayed now or canceled as well. And so now what I'm trying to figure out is, okay, I need to get to New York. That doesn't necessarily mean I have to fly into New York. I just need to get within striking distance of New York. Because I've never missed a client meeting before, never missed a client engagement. I'm not about to start now. And so I'm just like now looking, at all the flight schedules, all the flights that look like they're going to leave Dallas that evening, and get myself on the last flight out that happens to be on Baltimore, to Baltimore. And so I'm like, you know what? I just need to get to the East Coast, right? Like New York is not even within striking distance of Dallas. Now at least I'm in the same ballpark if I can get to Baltimore. So get on the whatever it was, 10:30, 11 p.m. flight after being at the airport since 6 or 5. Last flight out of Dallas to Baltimore, stuck in a whatever middle seat because I was in the C group because all the other seats were taken. You know how it is. But hey, I'm happy to get out. Land in Baltimore. And as soon as I land, I'm scouring the Amtrak schedule. I'm scouring the other plane schedules. Okay, now how do I get from Baltimore to New York? And I'm with a colleague of mine that ends up making the Amtrak up to New York. We had some presentation materials that had been in a check bag, by the way. Okay, here's something I forgot in this story. We had checked a bag and we were so delayed. We were so delayed. I had gone back out to get the check bag back. And then took it through as a carry-on.
Nice.
And took it onto the plane. And so that's the part that I forgot of the story. It's in Dallas. I was like, there's no way I'm getting stuck with a check bag. So went back, finagled the person to get it for me, take it, went through security with it, got back, onto the plane with, more carry-on bags than I should have, but was able to sneak them on, get to Baltimore, tell my colleague to go ahead, catch the 3:30 Amtrak, and I'll grab all the carry-ons and I'll figure something out. And so she goes ahead and does that. I get off the plane and I just end up opening up my phone and looking at which flights are leaving in a couple hours from Baltimore and booking a United flight for 2 hours later and just kind of going back through security and getting on that flight, made it into Newark at, 7 a.m. and, grabbed a car, went up to a gym that was open, ended up showering and heading straight to the client site. So it was just an all-night adventure. And you know what? It was worth it because I can still honestly to this day say that I've never missed a client engagement or a meeting due to travel. And so, hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I can't make that claim by any means. I have missed plenty of meetings and client engagements because of travel, but I have to say everybody's always pretty forgiving.
It's understandable.
And the vast majority of the time, it's not going to be your fault, right? So you got to make the best decisions that you can. Your story, Namaan, did remind me of something that happened only in the past couple of months. But I was flying from Chicago back to Raleigh-Durham, where I'm currently located, and I was on American through Charlotte. So, you mentioned it already, but kind of consulting rule number 1, you pack in a carry-on. You don't check your luggage. That is a rookie move. And although I had probably, borderline too much stuff. The consultant traveler needs to remind themselves that leisure travelers get away with like huge carry-on bags. And so even though you might have stuff kind of, you might have stuff stuffed in your backpack or kind of stuffed in at one of my favorite tricks is to like stuff in a Starbucks bag or a Hudson News bag. Now I have to go buy something to be able to do that, but then I can offload quite a bit of stuff into a Starbucks bag or a Hudson News bag, and I can still have one carry-on and one personal item, right? So that's like personal tip. And so I am flying back to Raleigh-Durham because I have a client engagement in the morning. I knew that there was weather coming in, as you had in your story. And I searched and scoured the different flight schedules. There wasn't really a better option for me to get home. So instead, I just tried number one, I'm going to ensure that I have a carry-on instead of a check bag. And then let's just see what happens. And I thought that my biggest struggle was going to be getting out of Chicago. Instead, I make it to Charlotte, and then they announce, oh, there's a delay. And okay, well, but I'm already in Charlotte. I'm in North Carolina. This is a 11 o'clock, roughly p.m. departure, Charlotte to Raleigh-Durham. I mean, time in the air has got to be something like 25 minutes. Yeah. I mean, nothing, right? The overall flight, I think, is booked. It says it takes about an hour or something, but all that is really takeoff, taxi, landing, all that stuff. So it's delayed. And then they push it back again. And now people are starting to go to the counter and obviously ask questions. Consulting rule number 2 is you don't have people at the counter fix your problems. Nope. You immediately go on the phone or on chat to be able to be more efficient about the whole thing. Or you at least double up. You can get yourself in line and you get yourself on the phone, right? So a bunch of people are going in line. I go ahead and just ask the people that are coming out of line, what did you learn? What's going on? And they say, well, the gate agent says that there is a mechanical issue on the plane and they're going to have to do a diagnostic. So, okay, I decide my key question is for the gate agent, and I get myself in line. I know you can't tell me anything right now, but usually when you hear that there's a diagnostic and a mechanical issue with this type of plane, how long does that usually take to do? She hadn't announced anything to the broader gate area, but she tells me after I ask her this pointed question, it's usually about an hour to an hour and a half before we have an answer. And I said, okay, hypothetically, if the answer is that this plane is not flyable tonight, do you know of the situation in the rest of the airport? Is it possible to get another airplane? She said, it's possible, but we may very well just reschedule for the morning. Immediately, Namaan, I walk straight to the rental car agency. I punch it in my phone on Hertz from the gate to the rental car place. I hop in a car and I drive the 2 hours home. And it was, it's not that far, 2.5 hours, something like that. And then I was following the flight as I got in the car. I'm following the flight. And it did, Namaan, actually fly from Charlotte to RDU that evening. And it didn't arrive until like 4 a.m. And so by paying a little bit of extra money, by taking quick action, I got what I was told at Hertz was the last rental car and booked a little one-way and saved myself about 3 hours of sleep that night. So
I love it. I've done the same exact thing coming from St. Louis to DFW to Austin. That was supposed to be the itinerary. Storms again. We're in St. Louis for like 6 or 7 hours. The plane goes at whatever 10 p.m. lands in Dallas at 12 or 1. Then they're trying to figure out if there's enough of us connecting to where the plane was still there. They're trying to figure out if it's actually going to go now or not. I did the same thing. Didn't even bother to find out. I just walked out while I was there. Yep, on the Hertz app. one of the last cars was a pickup truck. So I drove in a pickup truck from Dallas to Austin overnight, got into my bed at like 4:35 in the morning. And that was really important to me because I was supposed to be coming home for like one day. I had a flight out for my next trip at 2 p.m. that same afternoon. And so, instead of having one night at home, I ended up getting 8 hours at home. But that was better than just not coming home at all. And so sometimes you make a quick decision. I honestly didn't even check what happened with that plane. I didn't want to know. I was like, I made the decision. Here's what, and I'm going to just live with it and own it and get home and try and get like 4 hours of sleep before I have to get up and go again.
It's just, you know what? You make it work. You make it work.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out when you first do it, your team and your clients, they might be frustrated, but they're going to understand. And you'll learn how to do work in the airport, how to take calls, making sure that you mute yourself when the, huge booming voice comes down from the ceiling. But sometimes it's a little bit of a power move as well, right? Like being able to do business in transit, to still be value add as you're going through that travel part of your week. Different people make different decisions, but you've definitely got a subset of people that are like, I'm going to take that Monday 5:15 a.m. flight and I'm going to come in with pajama bottoms and, I'm going to have easily accessible my real clothes and I'm just going to sleep the entire time. And then you've got other people with their laptop open and they're making edits on their slides and they are finishing up things for an upcoming client meeting and they're using that time productively. Just, each of us just have to figure out how we operate and what works best for us.
Absolutely. Any other crazy stories, Stephanie, you want to share while we're together?
Gosh, I remember how crazy it was the first time that I was on an airplane that was fumigated, right?
Oh.
Like, because when you're working in parts of the world that have, I think especially kind of airborne, like mosquito-borne illnesses, right? They fumigate the plane before you leave. And I worked for a summer in Nigeria, and I remember the first time that I got on a outbound flight, and it just the cabin started to fill up with smoke, and I was just so confused. I was so confused what was going on. I don't know how I hadn't experienced that in my personal travels yet, that it was in professional travels the first time I experienced it. Now I've seen that more often with other places I've visited. So that one definitely sticks out. And then just the I guess one last tip is some of the airlines, as a status benefit, will say they give you an opportunity to recognize key airline personnel who've added to your experience. And I've just found that taking those extra few moments to fill out those surveys or carry those certificates with you really goes a long way to, not only doing something kind for somebody else and helping make their day, but if you're on, you can actually build some connections or even kind of acquaintanceships, relationships with some of the people in the travel sphere. Kind of you go in, it's the same desk agent at the hotel every single time when you go to check in, or you can end up with kind of some repetition on the flight schedule with flight crews and flight attendants, and kind of, making sure to acknowledge these people, thank them for their efforts, even use some of those opportunities that the businesses give you to recognize their efforts. It really can go a long way, not only in your experience, but kind of making their day and making their job a little bit nicer overall as well. So that's kind of my last little cherry on top piece that hopefully we get this next generation of consultants to be efficient travelers, but also be just real, good humans as we all go through this process together.
Absolutely. I've been on a, long international flight and, the crew recognizes me and I recognize them from a previous flight. It happens if you fly enough. I know people that bring gifts for the flight attendants every flight that they take. That's not something that I personally do. It's not guaranteed to get you special treatment, but it's very generous. And on the margins, it probably does help. Let's be real. So yeah, I think that's the golden rule of travel is, nothing is really ever the fault of the people that are right in front of you wearing the uniform of the airline. So pointing fingers at them, yelling at them is not really going to get you anywhere. And that's not really the way that you want to represent yourself or your firm anyways out in public.
Awesome. It's been so fun, Namaan, to learn about your experiences, to chat around this, to talk about successes and failures and best practices and tips and tricks. And I hope that everybody will, take away from this what they will and just be excited about that part of the job.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks for joining us today. In reality, Namaan and I could have swapped stories for several more hours, but we wanted to just hit some of the highlights and lowlights. We're always wishing you smooth seasons of travel ahead. We hope you've enjoyed this travel series and make sure to check out the other episodes if you still need to catch up. We'll see you next time.